All right, good evening, everybody. It is 5:31 on a Thursday. I don't know about you all, but it is doing the apocalypse right now. It is like pouring rain and lightning and thunder, but it is also extremely sunny. So that's weird. In any case, welcome to the Trauma Informed Care Task Force. Today is Thursday, August 4th. The year is 2022. I'm Zeke. I chair the task force. Great to be with you all. As a reminder, we are live on YouTube. So to the millions of people watching, hello. And to everyone joining us tonight, it is great to see you. Tonight, we had a DEI scheduled. Unfortunately, our DEI presenter is not able to make it, is not able to present. However, I did want to share a few announcements before we get into our work groups. First off is we, on August 10th, as I had mentioned, we are going to have a press conference related to an announcement on BCRI. As folks will remember, BCRI is the Baltimore Crisis Response. It is the organization that the city partners with to do mobile crisis outreach. So for folks who are in any sort of mental health distress, who are either suffering from a drug overdose or schizophrenia or anything, instead of folks calling 911, we can now call 988 and BCRI will arrive on the scene. In previous years, the city has not done much to fund BCRI, but this year is different. In the 2020 fiscal 23 budget, Mayor Scott put in $1.5 million to support the work of BCRI and mobile crisis outreach. That is huge because it enables them to get basically fully staffed up with clinicians, with folks with lived experience, with some nurses. It's really important as we think about having a city that is not just police, that we build and really build the infrastructure to have alternatives to incarceration and to police response. So on August 10th at 2 p.m. at City Hall, we're gonna have a big press conference on it. And the reason why I want everyone on this task force to join is that without this task force, this would not have happened, or at least it wouldn't have happened to the extent that it happened. As folks will remember, Fariha, Nika, and the policy subcommittee wrote a letter to Mayor Scott advocating and pushing to fund BCRI. Mayor Scott responded. We had a really good negotiation within the city council and with the mayor. This really became a priority for the council. It was, I can't tell you how many of my colleagues said throughout the council hearings, we need to fund BCRI, we need to fund BCRI. And again, I would argue that does not happen if this task force hadn't have made it a thing. So very much props to you all for the advocacy. And again, August 10th, 2 p.m. in front of City Hall. I know, some folks have, normal jobs. But if you do not, or if you can take some time off from your normal job, come join us. It will be joyful. It will be one of these moments where we really get to celebrate something positive that we are able to accomplish. Another announcement, on October 6th, we will be in person for the task force meeting. Stay tuned in terms of who, what, when, where, and why, but just put on your calendar that on October 6th, we're going to do the Trauma Informed Care Task Force in person. as we had mentioned, we want to do that at least once a quarter. Obviously, it is convenient to do online, but it doesn't give you the same sense of community that you get when you're in person with people. And we had a blast the last time we did it at City Hall. Thank you, Anne and Tortilleria Sinaloa, for the wonderful tacos. And we will have good food again. I promise you that. So join us October 6th in person. Stay tuned for where, probably City Hall, but we will be back around with that. Before we go around the horn, actually, no, let's go around the horn, and then I'm going to ask Tamar and the folks from the training group. We had a really, really big win in that the training group was able to complete the RFA, which is a request for applications for the community training, which is huge because it is now out there in the universe. Tamara and friends are going to present a little bit on it tonight. But, you know, we know that this is a moment where folks' mental health is really challenged. And so having a request for applications out there is really, 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 really important. And that is going to help us build the community-based training. But before we get to there, we have a round the horn. And what's our question for tonight?
It's just sharing who or what is inspiring you this week.
Fantastic. So who or what is inspiring you tonight? Anne is going to magically send us to our little groups. Hopefully no one is outside right now because it is like a little tornado out there. And I will see you all in a few short minutes.
Is that noise thunder, Zeke?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's not a joke.
It's nothing here yet. It's weird. I'm in the county and nothing.
Well, that's wild because I'm not by Zeke and it's very loud where I am.
Likewise, us city people have to deal with really much worse stuff.
You fix that, Zeke. I'm done with that.
Add that to the agenda.
On it. All right, we can set up subcommittee for it. All right, and send us away.
All right, opening all rooms. We'll bring you back at 5:45.
Nice to meet you guys.
Welcome back. If you have not been able to check out this storm, you really should. It is absolutely wild. As I mentioned, we had a DEI presentation. However, the person who was going to present got sick. And so instead of doing that, what I was hoping to do, as I mentioned, one of the subcommittees, the training subcommittee, over the past couple of months has put together a request for proposals or a request for applications for a community-based training for Baltimore City. We have money to fund it through the American Rescue Plan Act. And now more than ever, given the looming mental health crisis that so many people are experiencing collectively, we really, really, really need it. And it is just a huge service that our training subcommittee was able to get it together. And it is now, it's now out there. It's on the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, MONSE's website. A number of city government people have passed it out. And tonight I was hoping to have Tamar and whoever else would like to comment, just share a little bit about it, some of the significance, some of what's important, because again, it's really a important moment for the city to double down, not just in training our agencies, but also our communities as well. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tamar Mendelson to share a little bit about the training subcommittee.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you all. And I'm seeing Corey and Kim, who are also in the training work group. So please jump in, and anyone else I may be missing from my group. Zeke just asked me before this meeting if I could say a few words. So I'm going to actually paste in the chat here the link to the RFP if people want to check it out. And then I'll just say a few things about the process that our team went through. So basically, as you all know, the trainings for agencies across the city are already in full swing, beginning with libraries and next moving on to park and recs. But the point of this RFP is really to engage with a provider organization that would want to provide trainings for communities and community organizations, individuals in the community. And so the idea is to find folks who would be good in that, who really would fit that role, and also would create an archive of these trainings so that they would continue to be available for folks. We really wanted to make clear that this wouldn't be a one and done kind of thing, but think about how to make the resources available in an ongoing way. And the other piece we discussed a lot is what kind of characteristics and expertise should applicants have. And so what really kind of rose up was that not only should applicants have expertise in trauma and healing, but they should really have deep expertise with Baltimore communities specifically. So the RFP mentions having a history of being a Baltimore City-centric, community-based organization, having skills engaging and working directly with Baltimore citizens and neighborhoods of all socioeconomic backgrounds, and real evidence of substantial experience providing training and technical assistance to community members with a special focus on addressing trauma and healing. So those were kind of the main points I was going to emphasize. Other team members, what can you add to that?
Thought I saw Corey unmute. I'll just share a little bit on behalf of Baltimore City Health Department. I mean, we're just really, really grateful and happy to continue partnering with the city's task force, as well as the training subcommittee. And my colleague, Brendan, has really been leading the effort with the training committee. One thing that Baltimore City Health Department's Office of Youth and Trauma Services has committed to is, while this particular training is focused on community, like by, with, developed with community, we still wanted to ensure that the Baltimore City Health Department work with that committee to ensure that the framework and the basic foundation information is at least included, so that the trainings for the agencies with which Baltimore City Health Department supports can somewhat align with the same content that our community members are receiving. But we want to make sure that we leave room, right, for creativity and tailoring to the needs of community. We don't want a cookie cutter situation. That was one thing that the committee did highlight and supported throughout this process. So we're just really, really grateful to be a part and here to support. Brendan, I don't know if you're available, but if you are, feel free to share anything else on behalf of our office.
Hey, Brendan, sorry, I didn't see you at first.
That is perfectly okay. I think Kimberly said it well. Thank you for the shout out. I know Corey's on. I don't know if he has anything to add as well.
Corey, you want to jump in there?
No,
He was having some connectivity issues, so I wonder if he's resetting his computer.
Yeah, it looks like maybe he dropped off for a moment.
I dropped. All right.
Do folks have any questions about it?
I have a quick clarifying question. Maybe I'm just not understanding. So, is this application for people, like individuals who would like to apply to become a trainer, or agencies that would train?
Yeah, so it's for agencies who would want to kind of develop and conduct these trainings with a focus on community.
And that extends to organizations. Sometimes in Baltimore, we look at agencies like government. So this is for, organizations that are community-based, community-focused, to partner with all of us, right? To share with the community and support our, collective learning. So really for organizations that are based in community and typically have that experience with community facilitation.
I also like to add that we wanted to make sure this RFP was Baltimore and
Corey, you may want to consider turning off your video and you might get a little bit more bandwidth.
You're free. Yeah, we can't hear you.
Hey, Corey, yeah, maybe try turning off your screen.
Since
No.
He shut it off, so maybe we can. Corey,
hey, family, I'm having a hard time connecting.
Hey, Corey, maybe do you want to call in? That's the other thing you can do with the Zoom.
or shut off the video. When you shut off the video, it worked a little better.
It could be his Wi-Fi because of the storm too.
Right. Hey, Corey, maybe try calling in.
He's logged off.
All right. Gotcha. I did want to also say, first off, thank you to Tamara, to Kimberly, to Brendan, to Corey, to everyone who has been involved in putting this together. The link, and put the link in the chat if you are interested in applying. The only thing with it is that you do have to create an account with Monsi. It's relatively easy to do, but if you click the link in the chat, you just create your own account, and then from there you get directed to the trauma-informed care community training. So for folks who are interested not only in checking it out, but also in maybe having your organization participate or get the grant, definitely use the link in the chat. Phil, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I thought the RFP process, I think it's great and engaging in things. I just wanted to raise an issue or figure out what we're doing around monitoring, not so much the fidelity of the implementation, but I've gotten feedback from a number of folks around that there's some structural issues beyond the initial training where everybody comes from a training, sort of the follow-up, more intensive training, working on implementation, that they felt it had gone less well with the libraries. And I'm just sort of wondering, what is the task force going to be doing to, I mean, I'm not trying to penalize people, but again, just in terms of quality improvement insurance, that we have a great knowledge base amongst the task force in terms of people having done many different things, particularly with lots of different organizations. Is there going to be any sort of monitoring of the outcomes at the level of it actually impacting whoever, if it's the rec centers, the people going to the rec centers, as well as are the staff feeling better about it? Because the people that were doing some of the training didn't feel, I mean, they felt initially it went well, but they didn't really get to do as much of it and at a level that they felt would actually be useful for many of the people, even though I think it's positive we were able to get social workers into this. I mean, there's some very good structural things that happened, but I'm just wondering from the task force perspective, so we can continue to learn and make improvements, is there any resources for doing some monitoring? Again, quality improvement kind of things, not trying to do a study to publish it, but again, in some places it may work better, some of the rec centers, because there's a huge variability in terms of the rec centers, both in terms of how they're staffed, how long the staff's been in the centers, whether they have people from externally traditionally have worked in the center. Some of them that's true, some of them they don't. So I think being able to learn about that from the facility, and then obviously for us, we're also going to the neighborhoods. There's also huge variations among the neighborhoods. So if we could be able to make sure there's resources in there so that as people are doing these things and learn, we can be building on the positive parts. I mean, again, just emphasizing when it's working well and it's doing, how can people find out how to do it better if they don't think it's going as well in their particular center or their neighborhood or something?
Yeah, no, so I think it's a great point, Phil. So I'll say a few things. One is with the libraries. So it was definitely a pilot. I think we did 9 or 10 large group trainings, and I actually think they went really well. At least the feedback on them was really positive. We didn't get into, and this is partly because of COVID, but what we had hoped to do was get into individual branches and do the further deep dive, particularly with Holistic Life Foundation and ACOBEN. With the rec centers, that is the plan. And that's the plan from jump, is to not just have like the whole staff training, but to really go deep and do the skill building. And so I think to your point, there is still a lot to be done in terms of how does this actually get applied. I absolutely do think there is opportunity as we pivot, as we start working with Rec and Park, for the training subcommittee, for our group to do, like you said, kind of a quality control, make sure we're doing good work. Folks were in a number of the library trainings, and I think actually did provide some really good feedback early on as we went through this. But I think as we transition Yes, there is absolutely room for this subcommittee in particular to do some quality control and really, just really, again, evaluate, determine, survey, get a sense of what's going on with our staff as we move forward. One thing that did go extremely well with the library system was we were able to create a peer navigator in the library program. Library system, Enoch Pratt had a zero tolerance policy for anyone who is believed to have used drugs or drank alcohol anytime before entering the library. And while folks can definitely understand, where that comes from in terms of not wanting someone who's inebriated in the library, we also know that in 2022, the addiction is a disease, and it's not something that we can just criminalize our way out of or throw out or, just try to excommunicate from our communities. That we have many folks that are struggling with addiction, and we have many folks that are in recovery. And so one of the things that the legislation called for as we went through these trainings is for agencies to also look through their policies and procedures and begin to shift away from the sort of previous punitive models and toward a more trauma-informed, healing-centered approach. And so we brought peer navigators into Enoch Pratt. One of our task force members, Donna Bruce, is a peer in the library and is really the pioneer of this program. She, along with Tiffany Scott, who runs the Maryland Peer Advisory Council, had the foresight and the brilliance and the chutzpah to figure out that this would be a great place for peers to go. And so Donna has been supporting both the Penn North branch as well as more recently the Brooklyn branch, so in South Baltimore, and providing services and support down there. And since our DEI, like I said, got sick today, I was hoping, we talked about this a little bit right before this, so this is a on-the-spot thing, so I apologize. But I was hoping to have Donna share just a little bit about the Peer in the Library program and some of the work that she's been doing.
Thanks, Zeke. I guess you prepping me for the interview with the Sun paper tomorrow, so that's how well we're doing. The Baltimore Sun wants to come and interview us. So I just want to share a little bit of data from December when the pilot program started. Back in December, we serviced 38 people. January, we serviced 43 people. February, we serviced 100 people. March, we serviced 164 people. April, 37, May, 77, June, 47. July was something, I don't have the number in front of me. July, was 433. So in between in those numbers that we serviced, they were Narcan training as well as community engagements, meaning that I actually had an opportunity to dial 911. I mean, not 911, 988, and use the crisis line to get someone service. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. You have to actually see it in action. In front of the library the day before yesterday, myself, my supervisor, and other peers were, so we have a food truck that comes on Tuesdays at the Penn branch and Thursdays at the Brooklyn branch. And we feed over 100 people each time. So that's free hot vegan food that they get. They also get the Narcan training and other resources. Other resources and engagement consist of someone actually being picked up at the library to be transported into a treatment facility or a crisis stabilization center. So as the navigation program progresses, we see that there's even a greater need. So now we're looking into bus tokens for them to be able to actually get to the facilities. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Donna Bruce. I am the registered peer supervisor and office supervisor for Enoch Pratt Library Peer Navigation Program. And I started the pilot program volunteering, and I'm blessed to now be a city employee with the Pratt Library. So we're looking at expanding in other areas in regards to gift cards, because we see the need where on Tuesday, if they miss the food truck, they may be hungry. I'll never forget this one young lady, and I was sharing it with the breakout group. She came in and she got irritated on the computer, and she was in crisis. You know, they was like, oh, she has to go. She has to go. I said, no, she needs to stay. I need to figure out what's going on with her. And that's through mental health training, my skill training, lots and lots of training that I've taken. I was able to connect with the young lady. Come to find out, her goddaughter, who's 5, was tragically murdered, and she was working on an obituary, and she was struggling on a computer, which exacerbated her episode. So 911 was called because they had never seen the peer navigation program. So they didn't know how to respond. Their first response was, we need to put her out. Okay, well, let's have the police come. 988 was called. I managed to talk to the young lady. Long story short, she came in 3 days later. A total different individual. She stated she had just gotten out the hospital. She wanted some more resources on possibly becoming a peer like Miss Bruce, as she said. And she knows that we're here at the library Monday through Friday. So the program is constantly growing. There's so many scenarios I can share with you. Another young lady, mom had passed away, and she was working on the cremation papers. And so was able to help her. 3 days later, she came back to the library and said her gas and electric was turned off. So those are the resources that we can give them to eviction prevention, gas and electric, BG&E, things like that, just to be able to link persons to those resources, but also them knowing that we're in the library, they know they can at least come to the library and talk to a peer to get the resource or support that they need. So it's an amazing program. And I thank y'all for, coming up with it and just being a part of it to be able to serve. And on the other side of that is learning that self-care, because we had to Narcan somebody in front of the library. It's a lot of traffic going on at that library. But they do know that there are services now in the library. You have the neighborhood people saying, y'all better go up in the library and get some help. So when we outside with our resources on the table and Narcan on the table, you got them calling one thing on one side of the street, and we got Narcan on the other side of the street. So we're just trying to be a support in the community. So it's a beautiful program. If you guys just stop past Penn North one time and just, if you hang out in the library and just see. We also, deal with volunteers, upcoming peers who would like to become certified, who are in training. As of now, they're in training, but they haven't become certified. So we also oversee them and support them in the process of becoming very effective peers. So yeah, that's what's going on at the library. It's kind of cool. Y'all got to come hang out with us. See, I pass the torch back to you.
Appreciate you, Donna. And let me just say, because Donna's pretty modest, but it is a awesome thing that is happening at Penn North and Brooklyn. I think, especially at Penn North, like initially the staff there was pretty skeptical. And it was kind of like, what is this? I don't know if we want that here, but the change in terms of the vibe, both for staff and patrons, has been extraordinary. And the head of the Penn North Library told me, she's like, I am so glad you brought Donna and the peers into this library, because it has completely changed the way we're interacting with people, and it's completely changed the dynamic. And so it has been a really, really beautiful thing. Donna has like a it's almost like watching like an angel do stuff. Just has a extraordinary way of connecting with people that I could never do and that most folks couldn't do. But just to see how like instantly comfortable and vulnerable people get when Donna's around and how they're able to access help and support is a really, really, really beautiful thing to behold. So again, I would just say to everybody, it is really worth, and maybe we'll schedule something up, but it really is worth going and checking it out. We know that Baltimore remains ground zero for the opioid crisis. We know that we fought and failed at a war on drugs that became a war on Black and brown communities. And we know that it didn't work. And so having this resource of folks like Donna, who are able to bring a level of support that we just have never seen in Baltimore, in a public space like a library, which really is part of our social safety net at this point, has been absolutely extraordinary. And so
Can I say one more thing? Thanks, Zeke, for those kind words. But those are lived experiences that have taught me to be able to identify and have that level of compassion and empathy. I want to say also the one of the officers was trained on Narcan, and he saved someone's life. And he came in the next day and he was so ecstatic. He said, "This stuff really works, right?" I'm like, "What stuff? What are you talking about?" And he actually saved. So it's a lot of overdoses, and it could be triggering because the person may get up and leave. They may not want a resource. So for us to be able to say they don't want a resource, but we did due diligence by staying with that person, being sure the ambulance came and things like that. Some of the other peers were a little devastated, but that's the reality of it. We can connect you to the resources, but we can't make you. And as long as we help one person, in that portion of the day, and the staff has definitely changed. Now they just come get me for everything. I say, now some stuff I just don't do. They're like, "Go get Miss Donna." I'm like, as soon as they come through the door, go get Miss Donna. But it's a great program. I encourage all the support because I do need mental health therapists. And I know it's a few that's on this line to come and bring your information to the library. So I can say, okay, I have this doctor that does this, a trauma doctor that does that, to be able to still link those resources out there, the homeless shelter, the food pantries. So bring all your resources to the library if it's to help anyone with mental health or substance use disorder, or even domestic violence. I ran into that as well. So thank you for that time, Zeke. Thank you.
you bet. Don't get hit by lightning out there, Donna. It's coming down. All right. I know Dr. Lindsay has had her hand up for a whole long time virtually. Sorry about that, Lindsay.
That's all right. I just had I guess 2 quick questions. My first question for the training committee about this is that, do you have any sense of what the time commitment might be like for an individual and or organization that might participate in these trainings? Just because I know our trauma program would be interested, because part of our goals are to do community trainings about trauma. So I'm just thinking for myself or the people in our program, how much time commitment would it possibly be? And then my second question was the medical subcommittee. Eventually, one of our goals is to get medical institutions trained. And I was just curious if the people who would do these trainings would also be able to come to medical institutions as well.
Well, to jump in, I don't think there's not, we didn't specify a time commitment because I think a lot of that is really flexible based on what the needs of the community are in terms of trauma training and sort of how long it takes to develop or deliver the materials. So really, I think that's something that would emerge from the work itself. And then in terms of the trainings for healthcare facilities, I think that the real focus of this RFA is community, but to the extent that resources that are developed become part of an ongoing archive, they can be delivered in all kinds of settings. And I'm also wondering if the agency trainings that are happening now will include healthcare settings and hospitals.
Yeah, let me, oh, you want to go ahead, Kim? I was gonna.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so two things I was gonna say. One, to Tamara's point, yeah, Lindsay, I would say, definitely apply, because I think, ultimately there is X amount of money, and the health department and Monsi are gonna give it out to different organizations that want to do the work in community. But one of the things I think that's explicitly written into the RFA is around collaboration. And so I think the more we can get of, like, whether it's your trauma program at Mount Washington or the stuff that Kevin Daniels does with Healing Us Together or whatever, the more we can get folks coordinating, working together, I think the better. So I would definitely say, like, check out the RFA and consider applying. And I think to the second part of the question, in terms of can it be applied for medical settings, I think ultimately, yes, we want to get there. As something your group can talk about as well. But I also think, and this may be where Kim was going to go, but one of the things we're going to do is, and it's in this RFA, but it's also something we're working on government side, is create a document base of film and, like, virtual trainings, which are, obviously, like, less personal than being in Park Heights or Highlandtown or wherever, but we want to have an archive of really high quality video as well, because I do think that some of this stuff, as long as you've got really, really, really strong practitioners, you can get it virtually as well. So once we've got that built out, I think it can be transferable, and I definitely can be applied in hospital settings. Kim, were you gonna say something else?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it. Just also the Baltimore City Health Department, once again, is really focused on fulfilling our obligation with the legislation to train agencies. And this fiscal year, starting in July, which we've passed now, through June of next year, we're going to be focused on supporting Baltimore City Recreation and Parks. There is also, opportunity for us to explore how can we support, while we focus on Recs and Parks, how can we support, each agency that's supposed to highlight or select 2 representatives to be trained as trainers, and starting to develop those cohorts. So from a capacity standpoint, that is our focus for this year. Last year it was libraries, right? And out of that, wonderful work, Donna and others, to ensure that our communities engaging libraries are supported. So now it's more so our youth and families engaging our rec centers and our recs and park staff, and even our community members. There's also the intersection of substance use disorders and things like that, and encounters that are happening in our parks and things like that. So we have to, just be clear on what our focus is this year, and look for ways to scale out and within Baltimore over the next 5 to 10 years. So while we want to do everything, we do know that we can't. But I think that there are opportunities within the community trainings to, partner. And then also the Office of Youth and Trauma Services is partnering when available with other institutions and organizations to host basic trauma 101 trainings and or other intersections like teen sexual health, as well as nature as a healing modality.
That's helpful. Thank you. I just wanted to add, I guess, that sometimes for me, I don't know if other people feel the same way, that the word community or community organization is really broad, and I don't like to operationalize it. I don't know who we always mean. Like, our hospitals part of community organizations, our schools, like what are the, I kind of like understand some, I guess, examples, but then I just like break it down in my mind, like who are all the things or places we're talking about. So I don't know if that would be helpful to clarify in the RFA, but thank you so much for that information.
No, that's a great point. And I think at this point, when we talk community, we're mostly just talking about outside of government. But it's a great point. Definitely, Lindsay, you should seriously take a look at the RFA and consider putting something out there. Wes, I see you got your hand up.
Hey there, good evening, everyone. I actually got caught in the rain, so I'm in my car. But Lindsay, I also wanted to add, I'm Wesley Dawson from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. One of the things that we are also working through with partners at Monty and the Mayor's Office, as we're thinking about our hospital and medical-based folks as well, is hospital-based responder programs. A few months ago, our folks, as well as the mayor, met with all of the major hospital conglomerates in Baltimore City, and working in the community violence intervention ecosystem as we're building that out. So definitely the hospital-based work is happening, and for sure want to make sure that we're calling people in and making sure we're pulling in the right partners in that regard as well. So I'm happy to chat with you offline and get you connected with the folks in our office that are working with many of the folks on this call as it relates to hospital-based responder programs and our hospital-based violence intervention programs.
That's great. Thank you, Wes.
Awesome. Yeah, would definitely encourage you all to connect offline. And yeah, Monsi's doing a lot in terms of both the hospital-based response and just the connection with Safe Streets and Cure Violence, and really seeing it as a part of the public health and medical health continuum, which is, I think, new for Baltimore and really important. All right, so with that, again, thank you to Donna. Thank you to the entire training subcommittee. Really appreciate it. All the good work. With that, I think we are going to go into our subcommittees. I'm going to start with the medical folks and then float around a little bit. It is storming like a mug out there. I don't know about you all, but my house lost power for a quick minute and then it came back on.
That was such a Baltimore thing to say.
Yeah, someone taught me that. Anyway, all right, let's go to subcommittees and hopefully no one else loses power.
Quick note, youth group, you are the lucky group that gets to stay in the main room tonight. So you will be live and recorded on YouTube for all of your posterity. It also means, though, that people will periodically pop into your room. So I try to keep an eye on getting people back to the rooms they need to go on, but particularly with the storm tonight, people may be kind of kicked out of their rooms and then re-enter here. So I'll check back periodically.
Great, sounds good. Thanks, Ann.
Yeah, you bet.
Hey, everyone. Welcome. Mostly familiar faces to the youth subcommittee. We'll just go around, do introductions as usual, and then kick off and kind of talk about the two results. We've had some exciting updates in those areas. So for those that aren't familiar, I'm Mariel Pfister. I'm the assistant director of the collaborative with Dr. Kyla Liggett-Creel. Dr. Kyla is actually on a cruise right now. So she, oh, Katie, I see your comment. Do you know which room you were going to be in?
I think I was going to be in the medical institutions room.
Institutions.
I don't know if you can put me there.
Oh, I'm not sure if I can, but I bet I can chat Ann to get you there.
Yeah, or if you just hit leave and go back to the main room, Ann's monitoring that, and well, we are actually in the main room, so I don't know.
Oh no. Does it give you the option to join a group?
I'll send Ann a text.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, because it won't let me send her a chat in here. So I'm covering for Dr. Kyla because she's on vacation this week. And yeah, so if we want to go around the horn, Dr. Leaf, would you mind going next, introducing yourself?
Sure, Phil Leaf, We Are Us Men's Movement. Ryan, want to go next? Or
I can go. Hi, I'm Kaylee. I'm a senior at Baltimore Polytechnic Institute. I was part of the Human Science Cohort 3. And yeah.
Ryan, you may have frozen.
Hi.
Go.
Katie, are you supposed to be in the medical group? Okay, I'll move you.
Thanks, Anne. Also, I feel bad, Anne. We have such a light group tonight to be in the spotlight.
You're good. You're totally good. And my group is really small, so we may finish up and then I may just come listen in. So
sounds good.
Okay.
All right. So Donna, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, sorry. I was multitasking. My name is Donna Bruce, registered peer supervisor, office supervisor for the peer navigator program at Enoch Pratt Library. And I love the youth. I work with the youth. I mentor the youth. I love the youth.
Me too. Karima, do you want to go?
Sure, I'll go. Hi, everybody. My name's Karima. I am a senior business management major at Howard University from Pasadena, California, and I'm here on behalf of Truth to Power.
Awesome.
And I also work with the youth, and I do love the youth as well. Love the kids.
Ryan, how's your internet doing?
It's not working. It's not working. That's that tornado. We can't hear you.
Hello.
Hey.
Can you hear us? Oh, man.
We're struggling tonight.
We really are, guys. Well, Ryan, if you want to drop it in the chat, and feel free to turn off your video if that's a little easier. But I work with Ryan at the collaborative. It's school social work. He is our amazing program coordinator and has been working specifically in this subgroup, as I think everybody on here knows, on everything with the creating healing spaces within Parks and Rec for youth in Baltimore City. And so the major update with that I'll share on his behalf is that we had that we had the Cleveland meeting last week, where we met with Cleveland, who has a really unique program as far as integrating healing spaces and having a more healing centered models in their rec centers. And I believe there was another meeting that also took place, which Dr. Leaf, if you wouldn't mind, I'll probably lean on you to update us about. For Donna and Kaylee, were you guys, and Karima, were you guys able to make the Cleveland meeting?
No.
Yeah, I was at the Cleveland meeting.
Okay. So just a quick rundown of their program. I don't want to spend too much time since most folks were on it. The Cleveland meeting, their model is kind of like, if you're familiar with the community schools model, where they have a school or they have a social worker placed in each center, that really does a full service of resources that they offer for anybody that walks into the rec center. They can connect youth with job opportunities, food insecurity resources, the whole gamut, and then also just providing that trauma-informed lens and therapeutic lens to working with the youth. And so the idea and the model is really to have this social worker who's planted in the rec center work directly with the director of that rec center, which we thought was a really interesting and cool model. And then Another aspect of the model that I really thought was cool and pertains to this work group is they have, I believe, and definitely Dr. Leaf, call me on this if I get this wrong, but they had 5 high school students for each rec center that served as a board, a youth board that would come up with the programming for that rec center. And so those 5 youth would be 5 young people who actually lived in that neighborhood, went to that rec center, and they would help come up with the programming that would be offered. And then eventually, once they graduated high school, they would get a job with the mayor's office on that advisory board. It would become a paid position. Did I get that part right, Dr. Lee?
Yeah, and actually Rec and Parks in Baltimore is doing similar things in terms of both having an overall, but they have youth at each of their teen centers, which are trying to expand with discussions about how to bring on the YouthWorks funds so that the youth may be able to get paid for 12 months of activities, both at the rec centers, but also for overseeing some of the planning and other things like participating in meetings like this. And so that's one of the meetings we had last week with people from rec, and we've also had discussions with city schools about integrating. There's like, when you finish with this, I'll go into the other parts.
Wow, that's really cool. So city schools, does that mean like the schools that are kind of attached to the rec centers?
Yeah, so that at our last meeting, we came up with like 3 or 4 specific activities. So there's 4 schools, 4 rec centers that they created what they're calling teen centers, because again, they didn't have that many older youth who are participating. So they've started already and had a number of youth who are involved in doing that. And so one meeting we're pulling together is those youth with youth both from our committee and some of the other youth advisory groups that are going on in the city, so they can be advising the rec centers around how to do that, and we can get input also from what the rec centers want to do. Then we're having a meeting with the principals from the schools that are nearby those rec centers, so they can make connections to them. They may be able to actually move some of the after school or out of school time programs into the rec center if that's a better place or an optional place, as well as working on some of those things to put that in place. And then another set of meetings are identifying the rec centers that are, some of the rec centers actually are physically located in schools, and others are within 2 blocks of school. So we're going to pull together those groups, and then they're going to meet both with the principals, but most of those schools are also community schools, because most of the schools in Baltimore City are community schools. And so there'll be networking of the community school coordinator, the principal, and some of the community groups that are working, so if they can pull together some of the activities, some of which will physically be in the rec center, some of which will be in the schools. But in terms of both the trauma training and other things, we want to make sure that they all are doing complementary things and assets. And then the third, so that's one set of meetings. And then the third meeting is also linking in, because once the summer's over, a lot of the rec centers have programming for older residents in the morning and early afternoon before the students, young people come out and do that. So we're going to have some meetings with those folks, as well as talk with Zeke, because the Healing Cities, the movement, not the task force, used to have an outreach program that was working very, very much with elders and making connections there. So we want to see the rec center is very interested in trying to, again, maximize and the resources that are available for some of the older residents, including people like myself. So that's another discussions that we're having. And then there's a couple of meetings coming up with the Governor's Office of Crime, Youth, and Victim Services to see whether we can braid in some of the federal funding that comes in through the Governor's Office that goes into local communities, but often they're going into multiple places, and whether we can bring them into both the rec center or some of the school-based programs that this group has talked about, to try to sort of augment those things and get an ongoing funding stream. So that meeting's being set up. So I think there's been a number of things. I see Ryan has his hand up, so he may have some other things, but that are really very much building on the discussions of this work group.
That's awesome.
Hello.
There you go. Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, good. So pretty much what like how Dr. Leaf was pretty much saying, we have a couple meetings coming up, and I would love for everyone, or you feel me, at least like the teens and other people who would want to join. I do have a meeting on Monday with Parks and Recs again to have like a follow-up meeting like we did I believe almost a month ago or a couple weeks ago. So pretty much just really want the youth presence there, because again, like it's teen spaces, so it's kind of like, you feel me, like kind of want the teens to give their input on how the teen spaces should look, if that makes any sense. But definitely getting prepared for the rec centers opening up, and that's pretty much it. And I don't know if you talked about like how in Cleveland, how they had the vans come out.
We didn't talk about that at all. If you want to talk about that,
So in Cleveland, which was I thought it was a great idea, they had like 43 to 45 vans that came out and not only spoke to the kids at their schools, at the neighboring schools of the rec centers, they also took the vans and went to the kids' houses to actually talk to parents too, to actually tell the parents about the different programs that were happening in the rec centers. And I thought that was a great idea, and I kind of want to try to implement that here.
Yeah, maybe that's something to bring up on Monday, is to find out if Parks and Rec, Baltimore Parks and Rec has vans, or what they have as far as transportation. I see Dr. Leaf shaking his head.
I don't think Rec and Parks has, but again, that's where some of the neighborhoods. So a lot of the neighborhoods have vans that they use on Sundays and Wednesdays, and some of the churches. And so part of the discussion is, are there some opportunities for braiding together some of these kind of activities, as well as if this becomes part of the linkages for the schools. There's some transportation, for example, that the schools also are providing. So again, can we reach out and figure out who has some of the transportation? Because I know our groups, the youth group, has come up with both transportation to programming, also transportation to some of the employment opportunities, because they'd like to be able to earn some income, but it's not easy for them to get to where some of the jobs are. And even some of the things where the schools are going on. Again, some of the people have to take a train and 2 buses or something to get to the schools. And if they're going now to after school programs, is there some way to at least, obviously if they're in the school and it's in the school, or if the rec center is only 2 blocks away, what could they be doing? But also, if a number of the people from the schools, if the rec center is close to where they live, might we get some transportation so they could quickly get from the school to the rec center, have a meal at the rec center, and then be able to use the rec center for some of the, both the positive development kind of things, some of the fun things, as well as potentially even having some of the employment opportunities where they may be able to work in collaboration with some of the neighborhood activities, where the implementation would be ongoing in the neighborhood, but using the rec center as a foundation. And particularly for some of the older youth, we're hoping that we can create some jobs where they can be the coaches and the mentors for some of the younger youth that are in the rec center, so they can actually get employment as being co-facilitators or some of these other things, in the same way like Youth as Resources and Heart Smiles and Healing Youth Alliance. They have some really great programs working with the younger folks. Okay, if we have the younger folks in the rec center, can we connect some of these employment opportunities where some of the the older adolescents or young youth could then use their employment, use the rec center as a place where the kids already are, and have a win-win where there's some employment opportunities for the youth, but they're also then expanding the opportunities that are available either at the rec centers or at the schools.
Right. I love that. And then that direct line of having youth voice in the programming is even stronger if you're already hiring youth that can speak to what they want to have at the rec center, I love that. And I also want to just speak to that transportation issue, which is also huge. I worked as a community school coordinator in a middle school for 4 years. And because of middle school choice, a lot of, like you were saying, our kids would take buses and trains sometimes 45 minutes, over 45 minutes of transport to school every day. And so after school programming wasn't really an option, because, especially in the winter months when it got dark. But then one of our programs had a great hookup with, I'm trying to remember where they got their vans from. It actually might have been BPD, but they got transportation for middle schoolers, and they went from our one program couldn't even keep 20 kids in after school. They maxed out at 45 and had a waiting list once they implemented transportation. So I think that's a huge get if we could figure that out. Awesome. So if you're interested and you haven't already got the invite from Ryan to attend the meeting on Monday, please drop your email in the chat. And what I'll do is I'll add you to that invite for you guys. It's 11 a.m. on Monday. Looks like a Microsoft Teams meeting. That's great. So we'll follow up around Cleveland and start kind of initially brainstorming. We have a lot of resources that we could potentially connect. I feel like Parks too, if they're interested. I know one idea that's also been thrown around is MSW interns. If there's any way that if we were able to launch a pilot program, having MSW interns in a similar role to what Cleveland's model at one or two sites was something that we might be able to find resources for, at least in the next year or two. So excited for that conversation. Karima, did you happen to attend, sorry, I keep putting you on the spot, the meeting last week, the YAR meeting about the feedback sessions, the listening sessions? I know they had the results meeting at 2:00 on, I think Tuesday, but I couldn't make it, so I don't have the notes on that.
No, I wasn't able to make that meeting. I was saying earlier I was able to make the Cleveland meeting, but I wasn't able to make the other one just due to me moving and such.
That makes sense.
So yeah. Sorry about that, guys.
No, you're fine. Dr. Leaf, you weren't on that meeting, were you?
I was. I'm trying to find my notes.
Goodness, thank you. I think Lydell was caught in the storm.
Also, Mario, I believe Dr. Leaf, I sent the link. I think I was like 2 days ago. I remember I added a couple people from here on it. I believe Kaylee's on there too. I remember Mario got it.
Yeah, I definitely did.
Okay. So yeah, the meeting is from 11 to 11:45 on Monday with Parks and Recs. Hopefully everybody who was at the last meeting that we were talking to, Dr. Leaf, comes to this meeting. And I also reached out to the Cleveland Parks and Recs team to just kind of get more information on like what their model kind of looks like, so we can just like have that model and just kind of mimic or mirror our model like that.
Okay, I just forwarded the invite to Karima and to Kaylee, even though Karima probably won't be able to make it. Karima, feel free to pass that along to Lydell or anyone else who's interested from Truth to Power. Awesome. So the meeting, for those unfamiliar, that happened last week from YAR, they've been collecting they've been doing listening sessions with youth around housing insecurity. And last week they were able to kind of present their findings, their results. And so, sorry, Dr. Phil.
Yeah. So a big part of it was around they were particularly, a lot of things focused on the schools and what the schools could be doing better, because most of the youth they were talking about were school age, and both because students were moving around residencies and things. Often they didn't seem to be supported as well with the schools, or they were missing out on some things, or the schools weren't even taking into account that they were also homeless, and trying to build in sort of opportunities There also seem to be some transportation and other things that by law the school system is supposed to be doing that really aren't being put in place. And they saw that as an area where a lot of work could get done. They also saw, though, that the rec centers and some of the other things also might be spaces depending on what's going on, because many of the people who are homeless, also their parents actually were working, but they weren't making enough money to be able to continue to have their rents and things, and so they were living with grandmothers, or and then they lived with an aunt for a while. I mean, they would sort of be moving around a lot. It wasn't they weren't in the homeless shelters. Very few of the people were in the homeless shelters, but they were there. But they were, again, they would be living in one place for a while, and after 6 or 7 weeks or a couple of months, some other neat grandson or grandchild will have to be moving in, and so the space got really tight. But the other part, and I think this is an issue that came up with our committee, is some of the LGBTQ plus groups. They were part of the issue was they were getting thrown out of the houses, their homes, because of their orientations. And so what sort of services and supports or training information supports the family members could get to prevent the youth from being homeless? I thought there was a real disproportionate number of those people who, particularly as young people, were becoming homeless because they weren't being supported in their household. And both those services and other kind of things, as well as facilitating the networking among them, which there was a great program but that went out of business last year. So even some of the supports for youth that existed in Baltimore in the past no longer are existing. So that was another big point that they came out, that the young people themselves had come up with as needing to be thought through and getting services. Because again, their orientations were to some extent causing them to be homeless in terms of their family members or other people were not accepting their identities and telling them to leave the household.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Yeah, so it definitely seems like there's some serious gaps in care. I can definitely echo some of the school system woes with, transportation and the McKinney-Vento Act and being able to follow through the McKinney-Vento and services that aren't, just transportation and uniform vouchers, like having a more, I know that the Office of Homeless Student Services with BACPS has been making some changes and growing in policy over the last year or two. But I would be interested to see if how their responses to these findings. And definitely, that's an interesting point about the gap in services for LGBTQIA youth. Yeah, that's a really good idea, Daniel. You put in the chat that it might be a good idea to reach out to Baltimore Safe Haven and see if they will come to a youth subcommittee meeting. And we can talk about these points that come up and get their opinions on these gaps in services and see if there's any supports that they could offer that maybe need to be better communicated with youth, or if this is truly a hole that we need to advocate for policy or changes around. Love that.
Also, one of our members who's not on now, but she's member of the teachers union, raised the issue of how more youth, they do an annual training, a day-long training on one of the days when the school's closed. And so at the meeting, they raised how could they get some more youth involved in doing some of the training. And since Kaylee's involved, and I think you were involved with the Healing Youth Alliance, Kaylee, or I hooked them up with those folks as well as with some others. Because that told them that they have done some training. I've actually used them on my course. They do a fantastic thing. They've also been doing some multi-hour trainings So you may, if it doesn't come up, you may want to bring it back to one of your meetings, and they can reach out to the the teachers union, because they very much were interested in having more youth involved in both in general, and they were wondering how to do that in terms of getting general youth feedback. I mean, some of them are able to do it because the school they're in may have a youth advisory group, but not all of them do. But there's also a number of the groups like Heart Smiles, Healing Youth a Mile, Youth as Resources, that have great, great youth involved, and so maybe our task force could facilitate, our youth committee. We might want to have one of our regular meetings where we invite some more people from the various youth programs, but also from the school system, the teachers union. Other groups, the recs, park and recs and stuff, to facilitate the connections where we could have some of the youth talking to them directly, and then they could be, as Ryan's been able to do with some of the earlier meetings and stuff, and it could facilitate some of these discussions. And I don't know whether Daniel has a thought about, how we might be able to facilitate getting more youth input into schools, because I know he's a teacher. I think he's a teacher. About are there things that our committee might facilitate having some of those linkages?
I believe, like you said, like what I've been working with, I've been just working with like Heart Smiles and Haya. But as far as like youth organizations, I definitely want to like link with more youth organizations, or at least like see how we can advocate for more youth leading more activities in schools, if that makes sense.
I like that a lot. Daniel put in the chat too that he's going to reach out to the BTU officer that's in charge of the Quest conference programming. So maybe that is a good place to potentially start. I love that idea. Definitely keep us in the loop on that, Daniel. That sounds like a great way to move forward. Does anyone have any connections with Baltimore Safe Haven? Let me see. Dr. K may. To invite them out to discuss the Youth as Resources findings and get their input on youth services around housing insecurity. Okay. If no one has a direct connection, I'll talk with Dr. K when she gets back and see if she does, and if not, we can try the old cold call, go through their website and get in touch with someone that way. All right, sounds good. So those are actually, I feel like the major updates. A lot of meetings and moving. Oh, I also see Daniel put in the chat. Colby Singri from another meeting. Okay. Yeah, that would be great if you could reach out to him too, or them too. So those are the major updates. A lot of meetings recently happened and are upcoming to kind of help us form our initiatives for this next year on the subcommittee. So definitely a lot of exciting stuff underway. Is there any questions that anyone has, or anyone want to lift anything up additionally for the group youth subcommittee at this time? No, that's okay. Sounds great. We it's a, I know we sometimes have talked about Handle with Care on here, but our Handle with Care Baltimore, I know that's also in the Mayor's Children's Cabinet, but there are, I did want to just let everyone know, there are some talks about looking at some different ways and trying to get creative and implementing Handle with Care in Baltimore City in ways that youth can have more leadership on that initiative. So also keep your ear to the ground on those exciting updates as things are still getting figured out, but another cool way that we could bring some more youth leadership into mental health in Baltimore City, which would be awesome. All right. I don't know if I have authority to end our work group early when we're in the main room. Not sure how that works, to be honest with you guys. Never been in the main room before. Dr. Leith, do you know? Are we allowed to end early or?
I'm sure we're allowed to end early. Just let me see. I'm assuming because that since Anne or Zeke's the host, that if we all leave, the different people that got moved out don't leave. But let me just text Anne.
Awesome, thank you. Don't want to accidentally end the meeting or something like that.
Okay. So yeah. So it's but I do think, thinking about our, to Ryan or something, thinking about what, given this time and our next meetings, and is our next meeting, how frequently do we meet? I got too many meetings. I don't remember when the next one of this one is.
Completely fair.
Oh, there's Anne.
I got that message. Hey, you all can leave. It's fine. It won't disrupt all of it. So
okay, cool. We have to go a little early, so that sounds.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
But I'm thinking before we stop, if it would be useful to figure out, we're just talking these things. We talked about other groups we want to meet with, not necessarily have every single one of them come to the next one, but if there's one, whether it's the homeless, because that was one of our priorities, some other group to both. I think it worked out really well at our last meeting. We had some people from the policy group came, and I think it was really helpful for us to understand what the policy group was doing as it related to youth issues and things, or at least raise that. Well, make sure you have some youth people, because even though if you're doing overall policy, when you're talking about implementation, there's a very different set of organizations that need to get networked in. So I think either the homelessness or the rec center, that picking one of those two and then trying to, and then inviting people to come to our work group, because each of the sessions does have, we always meet, that way will facilitate things where they don't necessarily have to come out every week, but we could spin off a work group on the homeless issues or the rec and park issues from a youth. I know they're very interested in youth engagement, and it may be after Monday. That's not an issue because Ryan, they're doing that, but maybe thinking about the homeless, if that's something that's really important, maybe we might ask the people that we know around homeless youth to say that we're going to have that on our agenda for our work group meeting at our next overall meeting, and you're welcome to come, and then try to also find some youth that are particularly interested in that issue and make sure we're inviting some of them. I know some of the youth as resources, it was, that was one of the things they spent some time on. They did this, that was one of the big efforts this last round, and I'm sure they've identified some youth that want to continue doing that, and that would help us with our homeless youth component, which is a big issue. And I think, again, with the school year starting, and since a lot of the things that came up with the youth as resources, it was really things schools needed to do. If we can bring together some of the school folks and some of the youth folks around homeless, I think that could be a very positive thing that our work group does, if people think that's okay. And
so, Dr. Leith, so do you think we should talk to like some of the youth organizations like Heart Smiles or different groups like that to kind of bring them, like we already have Heart Smiles like on this like committee, but of course try to like figure out if we can get some of those people from different organizations to, you feel me, go out and facilitate, or like what you were saying.
So for example, Youth as Resources, their big report was on homelessness. And I know that they had a couple of young people that, would hopefully be interested in coming to this meeting and doing that. And then, again, Heart Smiles, Haya, and people have broad interest. And if some of them are particularly interested in homeless youth, then that might be a good meeting for them to come to with our group, because we're going to be focusing on youth and homelessness. And then hopefully there'll be a spin-off where they can continue working more directly on those things. But we've linked in both the school people, the housing, the homeless people. We've again facilitated bringing them together with making sure there's enough youth there, so they're actually not just listening to us, but they're listening to what the youth and again, Youth as Resources did come up with. I mean, they were talking to homeless youth. They came up with some very specific next steps at the meeting they had earlier this week. So I think, I would give them a call, but in case they have some, they've already done that. But if they haven't done that, I think that might be. Again, we can still have the updates for the different parts. I'm not saying we don't do any of those things, but I think it could be a very positive use of our time for facilitating that discussion, particularly as some of the youth will be coming back to school. They may be coming back to a very different school than they attended before because they're home. They become homeless since June. And making sure that those are the connections, or understanding, from the city school people, what some of the connections, because, the Youth as Resources people found that there were a lot of things that are in theory supposed to be going on and supporting youth that the youth were reporting, they just weren't getting access to. So it's not creating it, it's getting sure that we have some implementation.
I think that's a great idea, Dr. Leaf. I'll reach out to Lydell tomorrow, see if maybe Youth as Resources would be interested in presenting at the meeting on the 18th. And then I'll also, if that's a go, I'll do like Daniel recommended, and I'll reach out to Baltimore Safe Haven and see if maybe some other housing security programs would be interested in coming and listening to the presentation within the work group.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Sounds good. All right, we've got our next steps. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Oh, I see Anna and Zeke are back on. So we are just wrapping up. We're all done here. The youth subcommittee.
Yeah, we're just lurking. No.
Oh, no problem. Lurk away. All right, sounds good. Everyone who dropped their email in the chat should have the invite for Monday's meeting with Parks and Rec. So I'll see a lot of you guys there.
Awesome. See you.
Right. See ya.
Bye, Kaylee.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, and the Youth as Resources had some really good, I think it relates to some of the stuff we were doing.
Yeah, I agree. I hopped on at the very end because I had a 2:00, but when that ended a little early, I was like, I want to see what they're like, see if I can catch some of it. So I got on at the end when they were like showing their, they'd consolidated like their findings and the kind of recommendations. So I totally agree. They had done some really great legwork there and gathered helpful information. So, all right.
All right.
Thanks, Phil. Have a good night.
Hopefully the rains stop. It's not thundering and lightning as much around here. So
I was
hopefully
gonna say, it's calmed down where
home.
I am, but it still looks kind of stormy.
All right. Well, hopefully it's moving through. Actually, I see some clouds are breaking up a little bit. All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Phil. You too.